and detective expert in erasing digital tracks receives a millionaire proposal, cleaning all online existence from P. Diddy before he is arrested. But upon entering the rapper's mansion, he discovers secret files, forbidden videos, and names of celebrities who died mysteriously. And the worst? The fingerprints of children and animals in an obscure database. Now he has 24 hours to escape before Diddy's men silence him forever. But he has found something so macabre, so powerful, that he just can't be erased. And the question is, are you ready to see what he discovered? In today's video, we will hear the account of this detective that tells in detail how was your experience in P. Diddy's dark mansion. Your report begins as follows. My name doesn't matter. My profession? Let's say I'm a digital ghost. Companies, criminals, politicians, and even celebrities hire me when they need to disappear. Not physically, but digitally. My work is simple: erasing tracks, deleting historical, erasing compromising files. When someone wants to disappear, it is me who guarantees that no one ever finds a trail. That night, I was finishing a service when I received a call without identification. Usually, I don't answer calls like that, but something told me that I should. Across the line, a hoarse and firm male voice went straight to the point. How much do you charge to erase a man? I hesitated. My work did not involve murders, just digital cleaning. But I knew what he meant. It was not to erase a life, but to erase his digital existence, all he has already posted, sent by email any trace of his online presence. It depends on the man, I said. The interlocutor laughed lightly, without humor. This is one of the largest in the world, and you need to disappear now. Then he said the name, and my blood froze. P. Diddy, a name that needs no presentations. Multimillionaire, an influential figure in the music industry, and lately surrounded by unpleasant rumors. There were processes, investigations, and complaints coming to light. He was trapped. He needs everything to disappear. Social networks, financial records, any digital test that can be used against it. The offer was surreal. $5 million. Half advance, half when the service was completed. Enough money to drop everything and disappear. I should have refused, but I accepted. An hour later, a message came to my phone. An address and an hour scheduled. Dawn, 2:37. It was a mansion in Los Angeles, one of those palaces protected to more secrets than any security system could hide. The work seemed simple, but I had no idea that I was about to open the doors to hell itself. I arrived at the address shortly after 2 in the morning. The street was deserted, but I knew that in places like that, no one is ever really alone. Mansions like Diddy's were not only protected by high walls and steel gates, but also by invisible eyes, cycle, armed security, and above all, secrets. As soon as I parked, one of the side gates slid silently to the side. No bell, no identification. They knew I would come. I took a deep breath and entered. The garden was impeccable, but strange. The statues, all black, looked like twisted human figures, as if they were shouting or trying to escape something. They were not ordinary art. They were uncomfortable, a bad omen. 2 men waited for me on the main door, both in black suit, too large and too serious to be just private security. They didn't say a word, just searched me quickly and made a gesture for me to follow. The door opened alone. Someone on the other side opened her remotely. Upon entering, I was greeted by absolute silence. No TV sound, no ambient music, just the sound distant from the wind blowing outside. The interior of the house was immense, but cold, as if no one really lived there. The marble floor reflected the weak lights, and the walls were covered by abstract paintings that looked more like nightmares. I was guided by a long corridor to an office upstairs. As soon as I entered, the door closed behind me. The room was huge, full of shelves with expensive books and a desk in the center where they rested 3 open laptops and a personal server next door. But what really caught my attention was the screens. 5 huge monitors took one of the walls, all showing codes, accounts, cloud files, social networks. It was there that Diddy's digital life was stored. My work was simple: erase everything. But then I saw something that shouldn't be there. There were encrypted folders separated from the rest of the files. Their names were strange, disturbing: Infant Sessions, Beast Night, Red room records. That was not part of the work, but my intuition shouted for me to open. Before I could think twice, I clicked on the first folder, and that's when it all started crumbling. My hands hovered over the keyboard for a moment. That was not part of the work. I should only erase the tracks and get out of there, pocketing my 5 million. But there was something wrong. Something very wrong. The first folder I opened, Children's Sessions, required a password. This was expected, so I used software that broke in other work. The process took less than 2 minutes. When I was finally able to access, my breath crashed. They were videos, hundreds of them, all numbered without titles. I started to open one. The screen darkened, and for a few seconds, nothing happened, so the image came up. The recording was trembled, as if it had been filmed by a hidden cell phone. The atmosphere looked like a luxurious nightclub, with flashing red lights and a DJ playing in the background. But it was not a normal party. There were children sitting on sofas, visibly uncomfortable, some crying in silence, and men known to the media, music and politics driving, drinking and observing them as predators observe prey. I paused the video, my head spinning. What the hell was that? I closed and opened another. This time, the video showed a dark corridor, hidden cameras recording hooded figures entering and leaving a room. Muffled moans could be heard across the door. Every second that passed, my stomach turned more. There were hundreds of these videos. The record fell. Diddy was not just erasing tracks. He was destroying evidence. I pulled away from the table, feeling my breath accelerate. But against all self-preservation instinct, I opened another folder, Beast Night. Inside, I found photos, granulated parties images in isolated places, mentions, islands, underground bunkers, masked men and women participating in something that could not be described as human. Scenes that looked like a nightmare exits, mutilated bodies, wide eyes by horror, blood-soaking marble floors. But the worst was yet to come. In the last photo, I saw something that made my skin freeze. It was the mark of one hand, a small hand, digitized, the digital of a child, and next to her, another digital of an animal. I pulled away from the computer, feeling a knot in my throat. This was not just corruption. This was not just influence or dirty money. This was much, much worse, and I was in the middle of it. Suddenly, a noise invaded the silence of the office. The sound of a door being unlocked. Someone knew I was there. The click made me freeze. Someone was on the other side of the door. For a moment, I thought to disconnect the cables and run, but it would be useless. There were armed security guards all over the house. If I tried to run away without a plan, it would be a dead man. So I did the only thing that could give me an advantage. I closed all the windows on the system and deleted the traces of my invasion. But before moving away from the computer, I noticed a detail I had ignored before. A folder called The Basement. I clicked on it. A single text file appeared on the screen. There was no time to read, so I copied to a pen drive and closed everything before the door opened. But no one came in. The hallway was dark and empty. For a second, I thought my mind was preaching pieces. Perhaps the sound came from somewhere else in the house. Or maybe it was a warning. I got up slowly and walked through the office, trying to look calm. It was then that I realized something strange. The floor under my feet seemed hollow in a specific part. I knelt and ran my hand over the polished wood floor until I found a small elevation, a trap door. I looked around. Nobody. Then I lifted the lid slowly. An iron staircase led to an underground tunnel. The air that climbed from there was muffled, metallic, with a strange mold smell and something more, something chemical. And then I heard a weak noise, like a moan. Against all logic, I went down. The tunnel was tight, with weak lamps flashing on the ceiling. At the end of the corridor, a steel door locked with a digital panel. I took my hacking device and tried to access the system. The lock was sophisticated, but not impossible. In less than a minute, I heard the unlocking click. The door opened, and what I saw inside was enough to make me forget the $5 million. It was a file room, but not a common. Confidential document stacks were scattered across the floor, along with physical test boxes, photos, video ribbons, broken electronic devices. And on the wall, a frame with names and dates, Some names were scratched. And then I recognized some of them. Jeffrey Epstein, Chris Cornell, Avicii, Chester Bennington, Aaron Carter, all linked in some way to the music industry or entertainment, all killed in questionable ways. And then, in the corner of the room, there was a stretcher, and in it, something covered by a white sheet. I approached, hesitant. My instincts shouted for me to get out of there, but I needed to know. I raised the sheet. What I saw there chased me ever since. It was a body, or at least, what's left of one. The skin was sewn, patched as if they had tried to assemble something that should not exist. Human parts mixed with something animal. And the worst? The face. The eyes were open, as if you were still conscious the moment it was done. My stomach rolled. This was not just a crime. This was a ritual, and I was in his midst. That's when I heard heavy steps in the tunnel behind me. Someone was coming. I needed to leave. Now, the echo of the steps in the tight tunnel sent a shock of adrenaline through my body. I had nowhere to run. The corridor was narrow, and any false movement meant that I would be cornered there in that infernal room. My only asset was the pen drive in my pocket. If I died there, no one would ever know what I found. I looked around, looking for an alternative outlet. There was a rusty cabinet in the corner of the room, partially open. Without choice, I stuck inside and closed the door as much as possible. The steps stopped at the entrance of the tunnel. The silence lasted an eternity. Then the door opened. Through the small holes of rust of the closet, I saw two men enter, big, dressed in black, armed. They looked around. "He was here," one of them said, his voice. The other took a radio and muttered something I didn't understand. I was still. Any higher breath could be my death sentence. One of the men approached the stretcher. He pulled the sheet back over his mutilated body and looked at the name of names on the wall. "We need to clean that," he said, pulling a lighter from his pocket. It was then that I saw the table in the center of the room. In it, a laptop still turned on, and on the screen, an open document with a title that made me sweat cold. Confirmed scan, DNA, and biometric catalog. That was not just a record of victims. It was a database. My eyes ran down the screen through the cabinet holes, absorbing every detail I could. The document contained identification numbers, dates, and digital collection places, iris and DNA. But the worst came at the end of the file. Origin, children, animal, experiments still in progress. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing. The fingerprints did not only belong to humans. There were records of missing children, but also of animals. And then something even more macabre. There was a name that should not be there. I felt a shiver through my spine. They already knew I was there even before I found it out. It was at this moment that the alarm sounded. The two men startled. One of them took the radio. "We have a problem," he said. It was my cue. With the noise of the alarm, I opened the cabinet door on impulse and threw one of the rusty shelves against one of the security guards. He stumbled back, giving me enough time to run on the hallway. Behind me, I heard shouts and hasty steps, but I was already running out of that hell, and I needed to escape, and I needed to expose this to the world. My feet hit the concrete floor of the tunnel as I ran, my heart hammering in my chest. The alarm sounded loudly, echoing through the tight walls as he shouted behind me. I was without weapons, without protection, but with something much more valuable: the truth. The mansion was a maze, but I memorized the way at the entrance. If I could get out of there, maybe there was a chance. Perhaps. The tunnel took me back into the house, leaving a big bookcase in the office where it all started. The room was now different, more dark, colder. The only sound beyond the alarm was my panting breathing. But then I noticed something that made my blood freeze. The cameras were linked. Small red dots flashed in the corners of the ceiling. Every movement of mine was being recorded. And then, the office screens blinked and lit. A figure appeared in all monitors at the same time. It was him, P. Diddy. He wore sunglasses right in the dark of the room where he was. His face was impassive, but there was something sinister in his gaze, something that went beyond fear or threat. He would be a certainty look. He knew I would never escape from there. "You went too far." His voice came out low, controlled. "You didn't need to see any of this. You just needed to erase and leave." My hand slid into the pocket, feeling the weight of the pen drive. "You can't erase that, Diddy," I muttered, feeling the cold sweat drip by the back of her neck. He smiled, a small, satisfied smile. "I don't need to. You are already dead." Before I could react, the office doors opened hard, 4 armed security guards. They advanced on me, and I did the only thing I could do. I ran. I crossed the office and pushed a bookcase back, knocking it down. One of them drew the gun and fired. The deafening sound echoed through the room, but the bullet went over the shoulder, burning my skin. I couldn't stop. I ran through the hall, diverting tables and furniture as the security guards came back. I turned in the kitchen and found a glass door for the garden. Without thinking twice, I jumped against her. The glass burst. I fell on the lawn of the mansion, feeling the shards stuck in my hands. But I didn't stop. To the stumbles, I ran toward the back of the property. The side gate that allowed me to come in was now closed. The sound of the security guards approaching made me decide in an instant, jumping the fence. I used the impulse of my despair and clung to the metal grid, forcing my body up. Another shot. The bullet hit the metal near my leg. One last effort and threw my body to the other side. I fell on my back on empty street, without air, without strength, but alive. For now. I couldn't stop there. I needed to disappear. And more than that, I needed to make sure that if I disappeared, what I discovered would not disappear to me. My lungs burned as I ran through the dark streets, blood dripping from the cut on my shoulder. Each step seemed heavier. Every shadow around me seemed to hide a spy, waiting for the right time to catch me. I knew Diddy wouldn't let me escape so easily. My car was parked to a few blocks away. I forced myself to stay calm, to walk instead of running, trying to look as discreet as possible. But fear eroded my mind. They knew who I was. They had my name, my fingerprints, my DNA. I was no longer a well-paid private detective to erase tracks. Now I was the trail that needed to be erased. When I finally reached my car, I stopped for a moment and looked around. Everything seemed normal. But my experience told me that danger was never obvious. I unlocked the door and entered, trying to keep my breath under control. I connected the engine. That's when I realized the error. The rearview mirror showed a black car parked at the end of the street. Lighthouses deleted, watching me. The first instinct was to go out accelerating, but that would only confirm to them that I knew I was being followed. So I made the opposite. I started the car and started driving slowly, without haste, as if nothing had happened. I turned the first corner, then the second. The black car followed. I tried different routes, alternating the way, but they didn't get out of my glue. It was then that my cell phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered, feeling the cold sweat drip by the forehead. A quiet, polite, but threatened voice spoke on the other side. "Don't try to escape. Don't try to hide. You have 24 hours to return what you got. Swallowed dry." What if I don't return? There was a break. Then the answer came, cold as a blade in the neck. "So you will never be found." The connection fell. They had already condemned me. The watch was starting to tell. 24 hours. If I didn't do something now, I would be dead before dawn, but I wasn't going to die silent. I needed to find a way to expose all this before they silenced me forever. My mind worked 1,000, 24 hours. It was all I had before they went out of the face of the earth. And I knew that when they said that, it wasn't an empty threat. I drove aimlessly for a while, trying to think. Every lost second was a step closer to my disappearance. I couldn't simply go to the police. The files I found involved 2 powerful people. And if I died, who would know the most of the truth? My only option was to leak the information before they reached me, but I needed to be smart. I took the pen drive from my pocket, holding it between my fingers. He looked small and insignificant, but carried inside him names, videos, and evidence that could destroy empires. I needed 3 things. Guarantee that the information would not be lost if it caught me. A safe channel to disseminate them. Right people to spread the message. I stopped in an abandoned parking lot and connected the pen drive to my laptop. My hands shake while copying the files to different locations in the cloud. Web, anonymous, encrypted servers. If I died, the world would still see what I found. Then I started setting up a dossier. I wrote everything I saw, every detail. The names on the wall, the fingerprints of children and animals, the disturbing videos, the sewn body I found in the basement. I saved everything and created several automatic shipping schedules. If I didn't stop shipments within 12 hours, everything would be fired to independent journalists, dark web forums, and even some Twitter and Telegram accounts that exposed conspiracies. They could not erase everything in time. But I needed something big, something that called attention before they could cover it up. It was then that I had the idea. I took my cell phone and started recording. If you are watching this video, it means I'm dead. My own words gave me a chill. I continued. What I discovered involves powerful figures, names you know and trust. I was hired to erase a man's digital tracks, but I found something that can't be erased. If something happens to me, you need to spread it, to go out. I sent the video to an anonymous channel and scheduled to be posted automatically on several platforms in 10 hours. The last thing I did was send a message to a contact that I knew I could trust, a former journalist who lost everything for trying to expose the industry secrets. Take this file and spread. If I disappear, do what you need to be done. I sent and deleted the records. Now I only have to wait. And then I saw it by the rearview mirror. The headlights of the black car came on. They found me. Time was over. It didn't matter what would happen to me anymore. The truth was already loose, and now they were afraid.